Hello, cyber students. Welcome to video number 5. You are moving right along. And today we're going to talk about the plant cell. So we know that all plant cells are living. So there are all sorts of plants. There are regular plants like how you see here, the usual plants that we see day to day. We have the Venus flytrap, we have trees, we have cacti. We have all these different types of plants, but all plants are living. And remember from video number 1, in order for something to be considered living, they're made up of cells. And I'm emphasizing this because there are some students that don't know or forget that plants are living things and that they're made up of cells. In the Regents, plant cells look very much like this drawing. Now remember that whenever you see these little lines, it's just because I cropped it out, and this was straight from a Regents question. So this perfectly rectangular cell is a plant cell. And let's just quickly talk about some plant cell facts. So plant cells are eukaryotic cells, just like the animal cells. Eukaryotic cells are also animal cells. So plant cells fall into this category of eukaryotic cells. Plant cells have a cell wall. So if you notice, do you notice out here in this plant cell, there are 2 outer layers? There's this outer layer, and it's not the cell membrane. This is the cell wall. Okay, and then there's an inner layer, and that inner layer is the cell membrane. Okay, so that's the first difference from a plant cell and an animal cell. The other thing is that they have large central vacuoles. Okay, they have large central vacuoles. So a large central vacuole looks a lot larger, and they're more in quantity in a plant cell. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These structures are vacuoles, and of course they store water. They can also store waste. They can also store nutrients. But what do you need to do to plants in order to keep them alive and healthy and well? You got to water them. Okay? And of course, water is, our H2O, is part of the process of photosynthesis. Okay? So plants have a large central vacuole. Now, animal cells have vacuoles, but they're not large, and they're not like centralized in the cell. But look how huge these are, and it makes sense because plants need water, lots of it. Okay, then plant cells also have chloroplasts. Okay, so I'm going to pick green because chloroplasts are green. Okay, and the way that you'll see chloroplasts in a Regents, in a plant cell, it's these dark egg-shaped like structures. They're organelles, and they're very close aligned to the cell membrane. All of these are chloroplasts. Chloroplasts is the site of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the next video. This will be video number 6. And it's a biochemical process where the plant cell captures energy from the sun and turns it into carbohydrate sugars for the plant. Just a quick brief explanation of that because photosynthesis needs its own video. Okay, and we will learn about similarities and differences about the animal and plant cell as we move along. But let's get started, and let's start by labeling the plant cell. Okay, and I'm going to keep this a green. Okay, so we're just going to label these are different types of plant cells that I took from different exams. Okay, so let's start with this one. And again, as I said before, we're definitely going to bump into some things that we've discussed in video 4 with the animal cell. Okay, so A is pointing to the nucleus. The nucleus controls all cell activity. It's like the brain of the cell. We know that. Now here we go with B. It's pointing to the inner layer. That inner layer is the cell membrane. Remember that we also call the cell membrane plasma membrane. Okay? C is pointing to one of the vacuoles, which stores a lot of water. D is pointing to the chloroplast, where photosynthesis is a site of photosynthesis. Got it. Next, A again is the nucleus. B again is pointing to the cell membrane. C is pointing to the vacuole. D is pointing to chloroplast, site of photosynthesis. Vacuole, chloroplast, cell wall. Now they're not pointing to the cell wall because the question probably didn't have anything to do with the cell wall, but just want to emphasize the things that you will find in a plant cell that you will not find in an animal cell, but we'll get to that more refined later in the video. All right, I think we finally got one that's labeling the cell wall. D is actually pointing to the cytoplasm, that matrix of the cell, the jelly-like substance inside of the cell. So this is actually pointing to the cytoplasm. It is not pointing to a chloroplast. This one is pointing clearly, B is pointing clearly to a chloroplast. A is pointing to the nucleus. And the cell wall, when we were doing video number 4, that question that asked about rigid, like keeping the cell's shape, rigid shape, this is what it does. The cell wall is what it does for the plant. It gives the plant its rigid shape, and gives it its shape as well, not the cell membrane. X is pointing to a very large vacuole. And then, of course, we have here the outer layer cell wall. And then over here, we have the chloroplast. Now, remember that this one isn't looking too squarish. You see how it's kind of almost round in shape? They rounded out the edges. I don't want you to right away look at something and say, yep, that's a plant cell because it's squared. Yes, that is true. But sometimes it might get you with something like this that looks a little fuzzy. But always remember that you have 2 layers. When you see those 2 layers out here, that's a plant cell, honey. The outermost layer, cell wall, inner layer, cell membrane. Here are all those jelly bean shaped chloroplasts aligned in the cell membrane, very close to the cell membrane. And then here you have, here's a big clue, this huge central vacuole. The central vacuoles, guys. And I like coloring them blue because, you know, we know the color of water. I mean, water doesn't have color, but when we color in something that's supposed to be water, we usually do blue. So these large bubbles, bubble-like structures is the vacuole. Just want to make sure you understand how to differentiate an animal cell and a plant cell. And another thing is that when you read the directions, it also tells you what you're looking at 90% of the time. So I really do feel that we can start right away with answering questions based off of what we know in the plant cell. What we know about the plant cell, labeling it. Look how simple this is going to be, and I'm going to keep my pen green. So let's get started. Number 1, the cell represented below produces oxygen. Now, we know this from the process of photosynthesis. Plants produce oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. And again, we're going to learn about photosynthesis further in video number 5. Which structure allows the passage of this oxygen to the environment? So these kinds of questions, they layer things, right? They put a picture of the plant cell. They talk about oxygen. And then they say, passage of this oxygen to the environment. Meaning, if the inside of this cell in the chloroplast is producing oxygen, how can it leave and go into the atmosphere, into the environment, into the air we breathe? It goes through the cell membrane. Anything that leaves or enters the cell goes through the cell membrane. So let's see, are any one of these labeling the cell membrane? B is. So again, which structure allows the passage of this oxygen to the environment? B, which is the cell membrane. Next. The diagram below represents a cell of a green plant. See how I tell you that they also tell you, which is important to read the directions? Solar energy is used to produce energy-rich compounds in structure. They are basically talking about photosynthesis. Okay? Photosynthesis happens in the chloroplasts. Any one of them labeling the chloroplast? D. Real quick, guys, at this point, try to pause the video before I explain so that you can start practicing. Whenever you feel like you can do these on your own now, that's when you should start pausing the video and then trying them yourself. All right, number 3. In the cells shown below, which lettered structure is responsible for the excretion of most cellular waste? Excretion, anything that enters or excretes out. Cell membrane is responsible, is the cellular structure responsible for that. Any of them labeling the cell membrane? B. Yes. Moving on. Okay, this is one of those questions that they mix it up again. They give you a plant cell, but then they're labeling a mitochondria. Yes, plant cells have mitochondria. Remember that plants and animal cells are eukaryotic, meaning they have a nucleus, they have membrane-bound organelles, they are larger in size, and there are more things. But to be honest, I've never seen on the test any questions about differentiating eukaryotic with prokaryotic. It's a big lesson in my class in the beginning of the school year to understand just the basics of it. And it's a good lesson to know about understanding cells. But just know that plant and animal cells are under the same category of eukaryotic. So they have membrane-bound organelles. So they have a mitochondria. They have a cell membrane. They have a nucleus. They have an endoplasmic reticulum. They have vacuoles. They have a cytoplasm. They have ribosome. What animal cells do not have, they do not have a cell wall. Let me change that to red. Animal cells do not have a cell wall. They do not have chloroplasts. And they have small, like about this size. vacuoles. This is more of an animal cell size that you'll see on the test. And they usually don't shape it like that. So remember that for the differences between animal and plant cell. Okay, so let's answer this question. The diagram below represents a plant cell, right? Which process takes place in structure A? Mitochondria, respiration, cellular respiration, not photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is in a chloroplast. Not protein synthesis. Protein synthesis is in a ribosome. Not digestion of fat. Cellular respiration in the mitochondria. Hello. Next. Which cell structure contains information needed for protein synthesis? They show you a plant cell. Information, they're talking about DNA codes, because the coding in the DNA molecule is what controls the cell. Okay, so which cell structure contains information needed for protein synthesis? They're not talking about protein synthesis, so they don't even have the ribosome labeled. These are the ribosomes where protein synthesis happens. But anything, whenever you see a question asking about where's information, they're talking about DNA, which is always found in the nucleus, which is 1. So I purposefully chose these questions with plant cells that have questions about what you're used to in an animal cell. But again, the same processes that happen in animal cells happen in plant cells. The only difference is that plant cells go through photosynthesis. Okay? Animal cells do not go through photosynthesis. But both plant and animal cells go through cellular respiration because they both have the mitochondria. I'll definitely have this more organized in the next video. Okay, let's go move on to number 6. Which letter indicates a cell structure that directly controls the movement of molecules into and out of the cell? They're giving the classic definition of the cell membrane. So it's not chloroplast, it's not a vacuole, it's not the nucleus, it's the cell membrane. Notice how they keep labeling B as the cell membrane. Don't fix yourself and think that that's always going to be the case. Just look for where the cell membrane is labeled. Notice how this B is labeling a chloroplast. Okay, let's do number 7. Which structures in the diagram below enable observer to identify it as a plant cell? I love this question. So it's either going to be the cell wall, the chloroplast, or the vacuole, which is not being labeled. It's not labeled at all. This right here is the large central vacuole. It only has 1. So without even looking at your choices, they're labeling the cell wall. So it's definitely C. And they label the chloroplast B, but they're not labeling anything else. Animal cells have a nucleus. Animal cells have a cytoplasm, which is what D is labeling. Remember, we labeled this earlier, this particular plant cell. So it's C and B. It's not this one, not this one. Okay, so our answer is B. Number 8. Which structures are found in every living cell? I also love this question, and I purposely put this here because this is something that we need to talk about, that we haven't spoken about in our many videos so far. I mean, all these videos 1 through 5, it's about cells. This right here is really super important. All cells, guys, have a cell membrane, right? The cytoplasm and DNA. Not the nucleus, but DNA, which is hereditary information, okay? So a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and DNA. Those are the three things that all cells have, no matter what they are. An amoeba, a paramecium, a plant cell, an animal cell. These are the things that all cells must have. So let's take a look. A plasma membrane and cytoplasm, that's true. Chloroplasts and mitochondria, not all cells have chloroplasts. Our animal cells don't have. We don't photosynthesize, guys. You don't roast in the sun and make sugar for yourself. No. A cell wall, no, animal cells do not have cell walls. Centrioles and chromosomes, no. The best answer is A, a plasma membrane, which is a cell membrane. Remember, they're called the same thing. And cytoplasm. Next, number 9. Oh, I get so excited when we go further into the video and I know you're pausing. I could just feel the energy. You're pausing it. You're trying to answer on your own and you're getting it right. Okay, number 9. In the diagram of a cell below, the structure labeled X enables the cell to, X is pointing to a central vacuole which stores water, waste, nutrients. Let's see. Release energy? Nope. Store waste products? Yep. Control nuclear division? Nope. Manufacture proteins? That's the ribosome. Best answer for 9 is B. Remember to pause the videos before I explain. Number 10. I chose number 10 on purpose because I want you to remember these really cool looking cells. They look like snake eyes. Those are called guard cells. Now, again, I don't know if you were in school this year, if you were doing a hybrid model, if you did labs this year or not. I don't know. But if you ever took nail polish and painted a leaf cell, put a tape on it, and then released it and looked at it under a microscope, and you saw these guard cells, okay? I just want you to know that plant cells have what's called guard cells. They close to preserve either gases or water within the plant, and they open up to release it if needed, any gas, any water. These guard cells help with homeostasis. Remember, I told you I'm always going to throw that word at you. Homeostasis is such an important, it's an important phenomenon for you to remember for everything. In life, there needs to be balance. Homeostasis is having an internal, stable environment. Stable, steady state. Everything's good to go. Okay? So let's take a look at the question. The actions of cells X and Y help the plant to, so what's X? X, cell X, cell Y. It looks like they're pointing to the same thing. They're pointing to the guard cells. Do these guard cells maintain homeostasis by controlling water loss? They sure do. Store excess heat? They don't store excess heat. Absorb light energy? Nope, chloroplasts do that. Detect changes in biotic factors? No. The best answer for number 10 is A. Don't you love seeing complicated questions and then at the end realize that it's just super duper easy? Once you know, that's it, you know. Guard cells, super cool. Okay. We are down to the last few questions, and we're taking a look at our first short answer question that I've chosen for photosynthesis. You always read the top, okay? Base your answer to questions 11 and 12 on the information and graph below and on your knowledge of biology. Let's go. A student conducts an experiment to determine how the amount of light affects the rate of oxygen production in a plant. The graph represents the rate of oxygen produced for one trial, X, in the experiment. By the end of the experiment, the plant had not reached maximum oxygen production. Okay. In the diagram above represents a cell from the plant being used in the study. Draw an arrow to a cell structure directly responsible for oxygen production in this cell. The tip of the arrow must touch the cell structure. All of this for nada, for nothing. Because, well, for question 11, this information might be needed for question 12. But I hate this. I hate when they have you get all nervous. Look at this graph, look at this X, look at this structure. When at the end, they're going to ask you something so simple. Where is oxygen produced? Oxygen is produced in the chloroplast, because that's where photosynthesis happens and that's where oxygen is made. Photosynthesis, let's do the photosynthesis formula real quick. Again, this is the next video, which is actually video number 6, because this is video number 5. You need water. You need carbon dioxide. You need the sun, solar energy, right? That gives you glucose, sugar, which is a carbohydrate. It also gives you oxygen, okay? So in the process of photosynthesis, this is all happening inside of a chloroplast. You water a plant. The plant also gets carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. You get sun, solar energy. That gives the plant sugar, glucose, and the byproduct that is out into the atmosphere is oxygen. So let's see what they want again. They want us to put an arrow, put a nice clear arrow on a chloroplast, because that's where oxygen is being produced. So let me pick a really good one. I'm going to pick this guy right here. This guy is minding his own business. And I'm going to slightly touch it because they want us to touch it. And I'm going to be, I want that teacher who's grading my Regents, I want them to know that I know my stuff. And I'm just going to say chloroplast. Or if you forgot how to spell it, just forget it. You don't get points deducted because of, misspelling. But just do what the question says and move on. All right, let's take a look at number 12. Identify the biochemical process occurring in this cell that produces oxygen. The biochemical process that produces oxygen in this cell. Now remember, if you're like, what is this talking about? How does she know? The direction said that this is for 11 and 12. Don't ever let that happen to you, that you have no idea what's going on in the question because you forgot that this information is for 2 questions, because you could probably ask yourself, what cell? In this cell, what cell? This cell. This plant cell. The process, the biochemical process that makes oxygen, that's photosynthesis. Nice job, guys. All right, last question for this video, number 13. I purposefully chose this question as well because they love comparing the animal cell and the plant cell. And I wanted to have them side by side for you. Okay. Cell X is an animal cell. Cell Y is a plant cell. Notice how this animal cell has a cell membrane, a small vacuole, the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, very organized ribosomes, the cytoplasm. Here we know it's a plant cell because cell Y has a cell wall. It has a large central vacuole, and these are chloroplasts. These are very large chloroplasts. But notice, just like the animal cell has the mitochondria, has a cell membrane, it has ribosomes, it has a nucleus. Okay, so let's see, what does this question want? 13. Identify one process that is carried out in cell Y that is not carried out in cell X. So they're talking about what happens Identify a process that happens in cell Y that doesn't happen in cell X. Photosynthesis. Now remember, these questions were handpicked specifically for plant cells, so you might not run into questions that have the same exact answers. Again, we're practicing questions that are of the topic. So I hope that this video worked out. Subscribe so that you can get notified of the next video coming. All right, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Once you see video number 6 posted, do it. Look at it, practice. And thanks for joining me and studying with me.